Hello Doctor Who fans and welcome to my latest Doctor Who review, where today I review The Mythmakers, starring William Hartnell as the first Doctor. So, The Mythmakers, after the one-part story Mission to the Unknown with the 3 astronauts, we now return back to the Doctor, Stephen and Vicki, as they travel to, well, ancient Greece. So, the plot of The Mythmakers is when the TARDIS arrives on the plains of Asia Minor, not far from the besieged city of Troy, the Doctor is hailed by Achilles as the mighty god Zeus and taken to the Greek camp. He meets Agamemnon and Odysseus, forced to admit he is a mere mortal, albeit a traveller in space and time. He is given 2 days to devise a scheme to capture Troy. Stephen and Vicki, meanwhile, have been taken prisoner by the Trojans. Vicki, believed to possess supernatural powers, is given 2 days to banish the Greeks to prove she is not a spy. And Stephen is involved in that too. So, basically, that is the essential plot of The Mythmakers. So, The Mythmakers. This is unfortunately, another lost story in the Doctor Who canon. Oh gosh, this season is painful with the amount of stories that are lost, and this is one of them. Because this is a very, I'd say quite an important story. Because not only is it a very interesting premise with the ancient Greece and the making of the wooden horse for Troy, for the Trojans to use, it's also Vicky's final story. We say goodbye to Vicki in this story. Yeah, it's a shame really. But once again, the folks at Loose Cannon have gone out of their way to reconstruct what they can of this story with the audio and images with the story and little text messages that come across the screen every so often. So, to Loose Cannon, I salute you. Thank you very much. So, I'll be as fair as I can with this, because I know that this is a lost story. I wouldn't call The Mythmakers a groundbreaking story by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly very interesting. Yeah, definitely. I liked it. I think it's a pretty decent story. I love the whole premise of it, the fact that it's set in ancient Greece, and essentially the Doctor is involved in the construction of the wooden horse, the big horse for the city of Troy, and I like how it all kind of builds up to the first great battle of that. I mean, I'm no good with history, but I've always found that part of history very interesting, the construction of the horse, and obviously the idea of Greek, the kind of incorporation of Greek mythology into Doctor Who, I think is great. And I think it'd be nice to go back to ancient Greece again for Doctor Who. I mean, not that I'm going to watch the new series, but still, I think it would be great for them to do that. And I love the look of this story. I mean, obviously, I can only go via the images that we've got, but the look of this story is great. The production looks fantastic. It genuinely looks like it's set in ancient Greece, and especially with the costumes as well. The costumes are brilliant, and it really does feel like a historical account, just with the Doctor, of how they made the horse. And the first half of the story is the build-up to that, and then parts 3 and 4 are the execution of that. This story is very tense. There's a lot of politics involved in this story. To some, this story might be too talky. To me, it wasn't. you know what? Thinking about it now, it's actually quite a solid story. Forget what I said, decent. It's actually solid. So, yeah, and obviously there's a lot of tensions between all the characters, like Odysseus, Cassandra. Cassandra is not Cassandra the piece of skin from the new series. No, this is a different Cassandra. Gosh, she's a bitch. Let's just say that much. Achilles as well, and obviously the Doctors, Stephen and Vicki. We also get introduced to our new companion, Caterina, who comes in the fourth part of this story, for no reason whatsoever, other than to basically switch places with Vicki. And much like Susan's exit, Vicki's exit is very similar. That's the one thing I'd say. I mean, I've enjoyed seeing Vicki's journey as a character. Her exit is basically the same as Susan's. She falls in love. She falls in love with this soldier called Troilus, who's probably just a couple of years younger than her or so. It's quite sweet romance, much like Susan and David in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Although Vicki's exit is much more somber. The Doctor's not angry. He's not frustrated with her exit. He's just accepts it. He's just like, well, I hope she'll be alright. I hope she'll be alright. In that kind of caring grandfather way that we know that he is, you know, because he is a grandfather. In much the same way, in a similar way that Susan left, but not quite as emotional. It's a fine exit, although it's not quite as moving as the other exits have been, like Susan, Ian, and Barbara. But it's, you know, sad to see Vicki go. Vicki was a good character. I've enjoyed seeing her journey throughout the show, through the rescue all the way to the Mythmakers, and it's quite sad when Stephen wakes up and sees that she's not there, which is a real shame. He's like, "Where's Vicki? Where's Vicki?" And she felt like she had to stay for Troilus. She wanted to clear her name. You know, she didn't want him to be left with the thought that she'd betrayed him, which she obviously hadn't. And she, you know, she loves him. She went back because she loves him. I will say it's kind of a copy of Susan's exit in a way, but it's done well enough. It's done well enough that the character can be left on good terms. I don't think Maureen O'Brien actually wanted to leave. I think that they wrote her out, as far as I'm aware. If I'm wrong, then please correct me, because I don't know as much about Classic Who as others. But yeah, I've liked Vicki as a character, and yeah, sad to see her go. So thank you very much, Vicki, for all of your help with the Doctor and all of your brilliant moments. So yes. With regards to Stephen Taylor, he's very good in this story. Much like the previous story that he was in, Galaxy 4, he's not, I mean, he's not in a kind of, in a role, he's actually more proactive this time. Whereas before, the actor complained that he was under the, feministic attacks, or so to speak, in a manner of speaking. So this time, he's very proactive. Him and Vicki have really formed a friendship, and he's really sticking up for her, which I like. And he's very determined to, you know, and I think by this point, Stephen, we've known him long enough to know that he kind of really trusts the Doctor and Vicki now, and he's really part of the team. So yeah, I think he's very good in this story. And how Vicki and Stephen go by the other names as well. Obviously, they call Vicki Cressida. And I'm not quite sure what they call Stephen, I can't remember. But of course, how could I forget William Hartnell as the Doctor? Without fail, in every story, he continues to give his greatest performance. You can tell he just enjoys this part. Even though you can't see what he's doing in this story, you can only hear what he's doing. It's still a very, very good performance, from what I can hear anyway. And he has some great dramatic moments. This story has a lot of dramatic moments when he's confronting Odysseus. How in the end of the story he's done with him. He does away with him after Odysseus turns the tables on what happens, of course. Yeah, so I like that very much. The music of the story is not great. It's a bit weird. I think the Trojan horse looks amazing. The way they did that, it looks really, really good. I do think there are some pacing issues in the first half. It does have some pacing that slightly works against it, but I'm not going to knock it for that. I do think that Caterina coming in the fourth part was a waste. Like, who is she? We don't know. She's a nothing character. I know she's going to be developed more in the later stories, but we don't know anything about her. We just don't know anything. She comes into this story at the end and just takes over from Vicki. That's basically all she does, which is a slight shame. So yeah, I don't think that this is anything groundbreaking. While it is dramatic, it's good for what it is. There are some pacing problems, and some of the characters are a bit forgettable. And you know, I do think Vicky's exit is a carbon copy of Susan's exit. Well, I'd say it's a good exit. You know, it's not a bad exit. It's moving, but it's basically the same. It's like she falls in love and decides to stay. Although Susan's one was more emotional, I would say. But there you go. That's that. So overall, this is a very intriguing story. It's very good. And obviously, Loose Cannon did the reconstruction, and I think the reconstruction is very well done. And obviously, you know, it's our goodbye to Vicki. Out of 10, I'm probably going to rate the Mythmakers an 8 out of 10. This part of history has always fascinated me, the whole, you know, Trojan parts of it, and, you know, the Greek, ancient Greece, and the construction of the horse. You know, there is a film actually called Troy, which also depicts this in a more epic fashion, which I think is interesting. This is more of a political story, which is fine, you know, and I think it works, and it's a goodbye Vicki. So, that's that. Next time on my Doctor Who reviews, speaking of epics, we are going to be looking at the 12-part Dalek story, the Daleks' Master Plan. Oh my gosh, that is going to take me ages to watch, so that will probably be next week. I'm going to have to watch this over 2 days because it is very long. It's going to be 12 parts. 12 parts. Wow. So, I'm looking forward to watching that. It's always cool to see the Daleks. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. I'm probably going to have to watch that over 2 days. I may record the first half of my review after I've watched the first half, just so I don't forget what's happened. And then I'll record the second half of the review the next day when I've seen the last 6 parts. So then I can just stitch the 2 parts together. It might be a longer review, so expect a longer review, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So, the Mythmakers. That's my review of the Mythmakers. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Put your comments down below. Let me know what you think. And stay tuned for my review of the Daleks' Master Plan. Until then, guys, thank you all for watching. And as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See ya.